which cultural norms have been around for far too long. Having to explain why you're taking a day off never made sense to me. Whenever I told my scheduler I needed a day off, they always asked me why, and I always answered it doesn't matter why, I'm using my time off for this. When I became the scheduler, I always stopped people when they started going into detail why they need their time off. I don't care if you're gonna go sit on the couch for a day or steal the Declaration of Independence. If you ask for time off, I'm gonna try to make it happen. Next time we lose a precious national treasure, I'm blaming you. You know what you are? You're a Nicolas Cage enabler. That's what you are. At least in the US, not taking about how much you make. Your bosses can't fire you for it, but everyone thinks they can. It's kind of a double-edged sword. For example, I do graphic design and data processing at my company, and my starting pay was close to what some of the people who worked the warehouse as box pushers 20+ years were making. Since I had to get training and have a specific skill set to do my job, it's natural I get paid more. But man, having 80% of the workforce be miffed at you because you make as much as they do in a fraction of the time makes the workplace feel toxic. My current philosophy is to only share my pay with people working in the same type of setting as me, so the other graphic designers and data folk, since a lot of people can't grasp the different areas of different pay grades. My state switched to a performance pay model, but with an annual contract, a year or so before I was hired. The veteran teachers are on a different pay scale and get small but steady pay increases as they go. In 6 years, I now make more than teachers who have been working 20 years. It's come up a few times and I've felt as though they were angry with me and not the system that is screwing them over. It can be quite uncomfortable. That the customer is always right. I think I understand what it means in spirit, but the problem is customers took it too far. It's supposed to mean if someone asks for their steak well done, you give them a well done steak and get paid for it instead of arguing about how steak is supposed to be cooked. Not if someone demands to use you as a human toilet, you have to let them. Going to work when you're sick to prove you're a hard worker. All you've proven is that you don't care about your coworkers. Tell that to management. I was in a retail job working with customers every day. If I was sick, and this is during COVID mind you, and I didn't come in, I got in trouble and my job was threatened. So I went in with 102-degree fever feeling like death, and when I went to the hospital after work I was informed I had COVID. United States work ethics are dangerous and costly. Chicks not having pockets. I'm over here right now with a full water bottle, a phone, a map, earbuds, and a Swiss Army knife, and every woman that I meet has barely enough room to put their hands in their pockets. They are missing out big time. I had a GF that didn't realize guys had functional pockets. We were sitting next to each other on the bus and I just pulled out my DS from my pocket and she was genuinely surprised it fit in there. My boyfriend whipped out his Nintendo Switch the first time and I think my jaw dislocated. I didn't know pockets were deep enough to fit an entire Nintendo Switch. Meanwhile I'm over here with just my fingers in my pockets and my phone sticking out of my back pocket. Maybe more controversial, but weddings, or more specifically the bridal industry. I don't understand how it's still such a profitable industry with how much it costs against how little people make. I understand the huge party and inviting all your family, but the price gouging for venues and cakes is astounding. It's sad that people are willing to pay the inflated prices. My friend saved quite a bit of money by just not saying it was a wedding on a few things. Big ticket items like cars and appliances aren't expected to last longer than 7 years. For appliances I've learned just by the bare bones ones without lots of fancy stuff. They tend to last way longer and are usually cheaper. I was told by my repair person that I'm supposed to call appliance repair shops before I buy to see what they recommend and what they'll even work on. Makes good sense to me. My 91-year-old neighbor still lives in her home and all the following were bought in the 80s. Refrigerator, stove, washer, dryer, furnace, and water heater. I've had to have the furnace worked on twice, but everything else works perfectly. I'm on my second refrigerator and second water heater in 15 years. Commuting. Hope it dies or becomes optional for desk jobs. Stay-at-home orders have crippled the argument that it's impossible for many jobs. I expect a lot of companies to allow hybrid schedules, work at home some days in the office the others, if not full work at home for many positions. They don't even need to say it's impossible. My job does mixed office and remote schedules right now, but they have put out notices saying they have no intention of becoming a work from home company and it's explicitly a temporary measure. So yeah, they can just not want to, which is fair I suppose, but still annoying. Bragging about working over 40 hours on salary. Conversely, as a manager, other managers conflating working over 40 hours on salary with dedication or professionalism. Yes, as a professional I will put in extra hours to get the job done. If every week takes 5 extra hours to get the work done, then my salary is based on something is wrong. Bragging about working over 40 hours. We shouldn't glorify exhaustion. People visiting right after you've had a baby or babies. Let mothers be alone with their infant or infants unless you plan to come over to cook and clean for them. Otherwise, send a text wishing them well, maybe drop off a meal and leave them alone until they ask if you'd like to come meet baby. Yes. My family's practice is usually to bring some food/baby supplies by pretty soon after they get home and then meet the baby 2 or 3 weeks later. Mom and baby have been through a hell of an ordeal and need to rest for a bit. Casserolling is what we call it. It was pretty common, not just in my family, but our church community as well. If anyone had a major life event, baby, death in the family, major surgery, etc., people would bring over food, usually casseroles, so that meals were handled for a decent period of time. Meetings that clearly could have been an email. I've had meeting invites where the description of what the meeting was about was enough to not need to have the meeting. Like, WTF, did you not read what you typed? It usually winds up being a way to blindside people with something. Are you available for a quick chat? Not wearing capes. What's my father doing talking to a man in a cape? Immediate responses. Unless it's an emergency, you shouldn't be expected to answer something right away. 48 hours is more than acceptable. I reverted to treating my cell phone more like I treated landlines. I'll get back to people when it is convenient for me. I have a separate phone entirely for work, self-paid and self-choice. When I'm done with work, I shut it off and that's the end of that. People I work with have learned I have boundaries. I still get lots of weird looks and lots of grief for not being available. I'm okay with that. Corporate culture as a whole, but specifically corporate/independent pandering to rude customer/guests, etc. It encourages them to act entitled and like crap heads cause they keep getting rewarded for it. Normalize being a peen. I joked with my boss one day that you should officially be able to tell off one customer a year without consequence because that one person would really deserve it if you turn in your coupon over them. Months later he asked me to repeat my idea to the regional president in the context of it being a joke, but still, this guy doesn't know I'm a hard worker and a joker. Now that I think about it, the idea stuck with him. My husband's ex-boss on his birthday fires a crappy client. Just rings them up and says he doesn't want to buy a business anymore. Lol. They were usually bad debtors or would complain about every invoice. The idea that autism either means that you are a dumbass or the smartest person alive. At school nobody I've told about it has reasonable expectations. Always either babying me when I do bad on a test or thinking I'm the next freaking Stephen Hawking when I get a 10. Autism is so misunderstood. Sure, there's many traits that people with autism often have, but it often presents itself in totally different ways for different people. Some people just can't seem to wrap their minds around the idea that they likely encounter many people with autism and don't even realize it. Many people with autism just live perfectly normal lives, they're educated and work normal jobs and take care of themselves. There are some people on a different end of the spectrum that may be more childlike and need help and support, but as I said, different for each person. My husband has autism. If you didn't know, you'd probably think he was just kind of a weirdo, like a way too into woodworking/video games weirdo, not a stay in the car kids weirdo. He's a middle school teacher, and he struggles a lot to keep up with all the stupid random crap school requires/grading, but he's great at actually teaching and projects and such. He's open about it with students B/C. He can get them mixed up pretty easily. He tends to recognize people by their hair/foreheads, not their faces, and doesn't read expressions well. I'm glad he tells them B/C. It's basically like saying, hey, look, I have a job and a house, and am married and like regular stuff. You too can grow up to be kind of regular and about as happy as any American who watches the news. You don't have to bag groceries or be a rocket scientist. The life script that's drilled into your head from an early age. You must go to college, get a career, get married, start having kids early, get that fancy house with the white picket fence, blah blah freaking blah. No, I'm going to live my life how I see fit. You just want me to do what you did, so you feel more justified with the life choices you made or were forced into. I had to get to my late 20s to realize how deeply this way of thinking was ingrained in me and how damaging it was to my mental health. Spent years suffering because of this perceived pressure and am just now rewiring it. Long hair is unprofessional, specifically on men. As a dude in my 20s about to enter the workforce, I hate the idea that I will definitely have to cut my luxurious locks because apparently I can't both have long hair and be competent at my job. Joke's on you. I have short hair and I'm incompetent. Barrier broken. Hi, how are you? I'm good. And you? I'm good. The correct answer is no complaints. It's polite, meaningless, and doesn't invite any further conversation. What if I do have complaints though? Thinking that if someone has good grades they are smart, and having bad grades mean you are stupid. Half the time good grades just means you're good at passing exam/complying with whatever necessary system to pass the evaluation. It doesn't necessarily indicate how smart you are, but will probably hint at your work ethic. Having to jump through hoops and interview with 10+ people to get a job. When did it become so difficult? Why do companies need an army of people to make a decision? Why do they need to waste people's time and have them interview 3-5 times? Why does someone need to write 1,000 cover letters for jobs that they apply for, only to not even be considered? Why do you have to write a thank you note for everyone you interview with? Why can't they be upfront about the pay scale? Why is it rude to ask what the pay is? It's pure madness. Why are businesses being so coy with salaries? I'm not writing a cover letter unless you tell me what you'll pay me. It's why I love applying for government jobs. I know they at least have a defined and non-negotiable range. Being buried after death. I understand people are sentimental, but graveyards are huge misuse of land. If we move to planting trees as grave markers, sure. Different story. But burying a body to rot for years? No. Burn me. Dump my ashes in the ground and plant a tree on my dead ass. If you want to remember me, which is totally your choice, I dunno. Commission a bust. Also, how long does it take before someone else can use the grave spot? Is it permanently yours? In 300 years can someone else have it? If I own land and die, it goes to someone else. So why would I monopolize a grave spot? I want to be left to rot for a few weeks and then launched at high velocity through my enemy's living room window. The smash splat sound combo would be memorable. Lol. Tipping. It's stupid, arbitrary, and reinforces inequality. Let's just pay people a living wage already. I wish I never had to tip based on percentage of what I ordered. Anyone else agrees that the waiter doesn't work harder because my plate costs 5 or 10 more bucks? Ideally all prices are increased just to pay the staff living wages and I don't have to tip at all. The need to push out babies the minute you are married or just because you are a female. There are people who don't want kids. It's as simple as that. No need to explain why. Not even just the people that don't want them. My wife and I married after 9 years of being together. We waited till our careers had started and we had the money to afford a place to live. We've been married 5.5 years and we are just starting trying to have kids because we are finally in a place where we are ready. We used to work 2 jobs each, such isn't great when you have a kid. Then we took a couple years to just enjoy living life. We traveled a bit, we got some puppies. Even now that we are trying we could have waited a little longer, but we are both 35 and that's basically a geriatric patient for a pregnant woman, so we figured we'd start before we lost the chance. people need to stop pushing people to make major life steps before they're ready. Having a baby 6 years ago would have sucked for both us and the baby. The same is true for people who just don't want a baby. Why force them to do something that isn't good for anyone involved? Meaningless small talk. You'd love Finland. Was just about to comment that. Finland does not do any sort of small talk, and I found it awkward when I went. The glorification of alcohol. I love alcohol, but a few months ago I was in a pub and my half-tipsy mind came to the realization that pubs are just socially acceptable drug dens. The whole Asian culture, where you follow your boss into the drink hole and stay there until he taps out. I have a coworker from Hong Kong who told me about this, and I couldn't believe it. It sounds awful. He said you have no idea when you're going to get home, or how wasted you'll have to get. Tying being a morning person to being a better person morally, one has nothing to do with the other. Yes, I'm naturally a night person, so I have found night shift jobs I don't plan anything for before 2 PM etc. I also don't shift my schedule to mornings when I'm off. I get so many dirty looks and judgment when I say I'm just starting my day in the middle of the afternoon. Or, heaven forbid, I get a drink at 7 AM when I just get off work. It was horrible. When my kids were little, I would get so much snotty looks. No Susan, I can't volunteer for the school trip. It hit the middle of the night for me. The idea in service jobs that you have to stand and look busy your entire shift because sitting down makes you look lazy. Had a job in packaging where the time was 10-hour work days with 3 total breaks including lunch. You couldn't sit. I had a spot on the line where a lot of us were at the end just folding tiny boxes, and I didn't have a place to stand, so I took a stack of the boxes and sat down on a few wood pallets. I was there for less than a minute before I got yelled at, and the rest of the time I had to reach over a few people to reach a box to fold. Literally made boxes half as fast because of it. It was probably good because it was a little unfair to everyone else, but like really? Just had to vent from that, thank you lol. Men who cry in public are weak. A woman who cries in public needs comfort by any random stranger, but let a man cry in public and everyone avoids him. I send you hugs, friend. Super expensive engagement rings. Ultimately nobody cares if it cost PS 200 or PS 20,000. And if your bride-to-be does care, she's not worth marrying. I didn't even want an engagement ring, I wanted just a wedding band. But people kept giving my fiance, now husband, a hard time about it, like he skimped, when in reality he actually suggested several different kinds, but respected my desires when I said I didn't want one. They also wouldn't believe me when I said I genuinely didn't want one. He'd leave the room and they'd be like, okay, now you can tell us the truth. You wanted one, right? I ended up wearing my grandma's ring just to get people to shut up. I live this. Engaged 2.5 years and I didn't want an engagement ring either. I just didn't want one. I have a slightly gothic style and I like silver and black jewelry, and honestly, mainly costume jewelry that as you can get unusual bits and mix and match. People tried to pressure us and or jokingly calling my fiance cheap. It really irked me, and in meeting new people situations and my having a fiance comes up, the first thing they mention is no engagement ring. My snap reply is just yeah, I didn't want one, shrug. Wedding ring will be silver, not picked out yet, but I have a vision in mind. Quite simple, maybe some symbols engraved. Every bride is different and plenty of us deviate from the norm. It's a personal choice XXX. Purity culture. Stop sexualizing little girls just because they wear a tank top on hot ass weather. Usually at a black party / BBQ, the woman is supposed to make her man a plate of food. I personally don't care for this because my fiance is perfectly capable of making his own plate. My older cousin considers me disrespectfully. Lol, if I made my husband a plate, he would see all the vegetables, put it down, and go make one himself. Shaming people who report criminals to the police. Being a snitch or a rat is somehow worse than protecting gangsters who destroy the lives of innocent people. Normalize protecting the innocent from criminals, not protecting criminals from justice. I think you should clarify violent criminal because people get the cops called on them for doing drugs which isn't hurting anyone. If they become violent on drugs, that's a different story, I guess. Theft, racketeering, fraud etc are non-violent crimes that still hurt other people's lives. I did specify criminals that hurt other people. Reporting someone who isn't hurting anyone for taking drugs is a different matter. Really just anything to do with gender expression / stereotypes. The way people demean men for expressing emotion / vulnerability is disgusting, and societal expectations of women are a whole nother messed up can of worms. As for trans and non-binary people, the erasure they face due to not conforming to stereotypes enough is just stupid. I didn't realize how fricked up gender roles were until I went on my first same-sex date. Turns out, having a guy hold the door open for you feels pretty damn good. This will probably end up with a lot of controversial answers, so let me put one that probably won't be too political or anything but really bugs me: the whole suit and tie style. Especially ties. I freaking hate ties. I feel like I'm being slowly strangled all day when I wear one, and despite years of practice I can't tie the stupid thing correctly without about 10 attempts. I'm not saying let them go extinct, but can we stop with idea that men are only properly dressed for things like work and funerals and stuff if they have some dumbass neckwear from 19th century aristocrats strangling them? Fun fact, in Iran they don't wear ties and call them the leash of the West. Smoking and then just throwing a cigarette butts on the street. How is this accepted pretty much everywhere in the USA? There are so many things wrong here, from public health to personal health, to litter, to fire hazard, to the general assault on the aesthetics of the area, to misuse of natural resources. Growing tobacco uses tons of water, which could be used to grow food that is actually good for you. There is no excuse for cigarettes. Where in the world do they not do this? Cause my passport can tell you just about every country where people do this, and spoilers, it's all of them. The only place I've heard of that isn't like this is Singapore, because they'll fine the crap out of you for littering. In television sitcoms, it's okay for women to physically assault men. Only male characters are allowed to be stupid, bigoted, etc. Male hitting a female, whole episode revolves around it and how crappy the male is, and by the end of the episode they have faced a heap of consequences. Female hitting a male, cue laugh track, no consequences faced. That something must be normal to be good. Weird or freakish has an undeserved automatic negative connotation regardless of if the thing in question actually is good or bad. Anything even remotely alternative has frequently been denigrated as edgy on Reddit even if there isn't a hint of angst. It's a shame really. I think the world could be a touch better if people embraced their weirdness and the morbid in an Addams Family kind of way. Thank you cards, frick that crap. IDK, I kinda like some form of formality and gratitude. When I wrote mine for my graduation, wedding, etc, I always took the time to make sure they were all personal and thoughtful. I wanted to show how much I appreciated people giving me something they didn't have to. I can see why some people don't like it, because if there's no intention it's a waste of paper and time, but I think the being thankful part should still exist in some form of practice. Parents telling their kids don't take no for an answer, and if they tease you it means they like you. This really does need to stop. It just normalizes potentially abusive behavior in a relationship. I get that the parents probably mean well, but they should at the very least tell them that this kind of behavior isn't okay as an adult. Doing that as a kid isn't any better either though. Treating old people with respect just because they are elders. Some old people are peons and should be treated as such. My father was huge on this. You should treat people with respect, but don't give people extra respect for something they didn't earn. Most people sit on their ass a good chunk of their life. They shouldn't get extra respect just because they sat on their ass longer than you. The expectation that a woman changes her surname to her husband's when she gets married. I can understand people wanting their family unit to have the same name, especially if you have or are planning to have kids. But why is it still the norm that it's the woman who has to change her name? Why can't the husband take the wife's name sometimes, or even the couple choose a new surname for themselves? The whole Miss and Mrs. thing can get in the sea too. I always thought it would be neat if daughters took the name of their mothers and nobody changed their name when they marry. Then women also get to have a tradition and history of a family name.